What's up, everyone?
What's up, everyone?
Talking Alex and Minim.
Talking Alex and
Minnie Mouse and Alex talk show الآن على MBC 1. I'm filming now the Toys Talk Show with Alex. Hello everyone, my name is Minnie Mouse. Welcome to Alex and Minnie Mouse Dog Show. Happy Thursday, July 18th. Today, I'll be talking about Ibrahim's trip on next Thursday. Ibrahim is traveling to Mahal, اسمه Georgia, on August 1st. رحلتهم الساعة 7 صباحا للساعة 12 مساء يوصلوا على جورجيا. اليوم إن شاء الله الخميس حنيجي هذا الشو أنا بزيادة كل خميس الساعة 1 بتوقيت السعودية على MBC. ولا تنسوا إنه you can watch my dog show في MBC edits كل يوم الساعة 10 صباحا. بعد بكرة حيجي الساعة 1 مساء بتوقيت السعودية. فلا تنسوا subscribe to OSN TV because Ibrahim will be uploading an OSN HD today. After tomorrow, I mean. Ibrahim will be uploading an OSN TV HD for the OSN account. But when he's working on it still, and that's gonna add my shows in it. Instead of Talking Tom being uploaded every Saturday, it's gonna be Oversand edits every Saturday. Instead of Talking Tom. We have ended Talking Tom. Yesterday was on Thursday, last Thursday was the first episode of Talking Harry. And then after that, we started to announce that Abraham is going to Georgia on August 1st. باقي 11 more days بعدين يروح على جورجيا. ما أعرف ليش عنده 11 days. وانا ليه just one day على طول. Abraham is gonna bag us and put us in the backpack and leave us there until the next day. He's gonna put his backpack over there on Thursday, August 1st. On July 31st, he's gonna put he's gonna put his backpack in his area where his grandma sits, and he's gonna put us there, and then he's done. So see you guys next time, and Alex and Minnie Mouse Talk Show next Thursday, and then after that, we'll see you in September. Bye. Love you all. That's how you film a video with the toys. I'm already done with it. If you want to hear my voice like that, then exit. Then come back later when it's done. Okay, I'm done editing the show for the noise. أليكس توي بيتي توك شو and ميني ماوس توك شو كل خميس 11 صباحا على MBC أدلس والشاهد بدون اشتراك. أليكس توي بيتي توك شو and ميني ماوس توك شو كل خميس 11 شاهد بدون اشتراك. We just fix it. Done. Here I'm gonna put my phone to the side and put some board on it. Mike here from Borgi. Detroit Borg.
This video is made possible by 28mobile.com. Hey guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, with a look at the new Galaxy Note. This video is made possible by 28mobile.com. What's up guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, with a look at the all-new Samsung Galaxy S6, perhaps the most exciting new phone from Samsung in quite a few years, and it's a very important one. It's really here to kind of bring Samsung back to the forefront of the smartphone race with high-end specs and high-end design and quality. So perhaps the biggest news story here is the design. Gone is the all-plastic design of the previous generation. Now we have an all-metal and glass design, which also means we no longer have a removable back panel to swap out batteries or expand memory. This also is no longer waterproof like the previous Galaxy S5. And on the front, we have a stunning QHD display with a resolution of 1440 by 2560, good for 577 pixels per inch. That is a stunning amount of resolution to work with, and the display definitely looks fantastic. Now, both the front and back of the phone are covered in Corning Gorilla Glass 4, which is more durable but still shatter prone. So, of course, if you throw this on the floor or drop it on concrete, you may break or shatter the screen. So keep that in mind, and you may want to wear a case. But the great thing about having a glass back panel as opposed to metal is that this can work with wireless charging. In fact, wireless charging is built right in, and this works with both wireless Qi and PowerMan. So this is kind of a true universal wireless charging system. Also on the front, you'll find an all-new fingerprint sensor, which uses imaging instead of a swipe gesture, which works a lot more like the iPhone. We're going to take a close look at this. On the back, we have a new 16 megapixel camera with optical image stabilization, which is good for 4K video recording. We also have our heart rate monitor returning once again. On the front, we have a 5 megapixel front-facing camera, which can record in 2K resolution, which is kind of unique. Now, in terms of our internal specs, we have a Samsung Exynos 64-bit octa-core processor, which combines 2 quad cores, one clocked at 1.5 gigahertz, the other clocked at 2.1 gigahertz. We also have the Mali T760 GPU built in. In terms of storage, because we do not have expandable storage, we have 3 storage options: 32, 64, and 128 gigs. We also have 3 gigs of RAM across the board. Now, in terms of our battery, that's at 2,550 milliamp hours, and again, it is sealed in. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the unboxing here. And you can see the packaging is very different from previous Samsung phones. No longer that wood grain theme. It's just a nice plain white box. So we're going to go ahead and slice these seals along the side. All right, so let's go ahead and pop the lid, and inside is our Galaxy S6. Now, it looks very familiar to other Samsung phones, at least on the front, but the big difference happens when you pick it up and handle it. You can feel right away that nice glass and metal design. Very thin, very lightweight, very high quality, and of course the battery is already in here, so we don't have to pop off any panel to install anything. Just slide the plastic off, and we're good to go. Now we have a few more pieces of plastic covering the camera lens here and the heart rate sensor right next to it. Now, before we take a detailed look at the phone, let's get to our accessories here. So we have our literature packet. Let's go and slide everything out here to see what we get. So in my case, I get a T-Mobile Quick Start Guide. We also get a Galaxy S6 accessory guide. There's quite a few of them, including a wireless charger and some cover accessories. A little flyer for Samsung's Milk Music and Milk Video Services, health, warranty, and safety guide, recycling program for T-Mobile, and terms, conditions, return policy, etc. Now, in terms of our accessories, we do get the new adaptive fast charger from Samsung, which is fantastic. This means you can charge the battery really quickly here. Samsung says you can get about 4 hours out of a 5-minute charge, and it takes a little more than an hour to completely charge your phone from 0 to full. We also have our micro USB 2.0 cable. This is just USB 2.0. There is no USB 3 like we saw with the last generation Galaxy S5. Now, something we haven't seen very often with a Samsung phone is a SIM ejection tool, because we do not have a removable back panel. We have to use this tool to eject our nano SIM. Also included with the Galaxy S6 is Samsung's new set of in-ear headphones. These are very similar in shape to the EarPods from Apple, but you do have replacement gel, so you can kind of swap them out to find the right size. But you do have an inline remote control and microphone. All right, so let's go and press the power button along the right side here to get it started. So taking a closer look at the design of our Galaxy S6, once again, it's the same size as the previous generation, 5.1 inches. The big difference here is that QHD resolution, which is quite stunning. And again, AMOLED gives you these bright, vivid colors in deep blacks. So down here, we have a new, larger home button, which also integrates that imaging fingerprint sensor. It's a little more raised here and feels a lot more tactile than before. It feels really nice. Of course, we still have our backlit off-screen capacitive Android keys, and we'll take a look at how those work. Up top, we have our flush earpiece. Right next to that is the 5 megapixel front camera, good for 2K resolution. We also have our ambient light sensor and proximity sensor, and we do have an LED notification light hidden in the bezel. Down below, milled into the metal frame of our phone, is the headphone jack, the micro USB 2.0 port, no flap here to cover it up, and no USB 3.0. We also have our microphone as well as the side-facing speaker as opposed to the rear-facing speaker of the previous generation. Now, just like on the bottom, the top also features those antenna insulators, and at the center is an IR blaster for controlling AV equipment, and then we have another microphone built in. Now, mounted high on the left-hand side are the independent volume controls, which are nice and tactile. And mounted farther down on the right-hand side is the sleep-wake power button right above the nano SIM tray. Now, along the backside, like a lot of Samsung phones, we have a protruding camera, which is a little more pronounced here because of the flat surface area back here. But again, we have 16 megapixels, optical image stabilization, 4K video recording, really nice camera. We also have this nice flush heart rate monitor, which includes the LED flash, which puts out a really nice warm color. It's not dual tone, but it's a really nice natural light. And I really want to talk about the design of the Galaxy S6, starting with the small bezels along the side. Really nice narrow form factor, feels really comfortable in the hand. It looks really attractive. Everything is nice and symmetrical. Of course, we have larger bezels at the top and bottom for things like our buttons, and as well as our sensors and earpiece at the top. Everything, of course, just looks about right to me. Along the edge here, which means that the surfaces feel nice and smooth as it meets the metal frame. The metal frame is slightly chamfered at the edge, so you do get a little kind of a glint from the metal, which looks really nice here. And if you look along the side, the rounded edge is kind of blunted on the right hand and left hand side to give you a little more surface here to grip the phone and to operate the controls. So again, a really nice subtle design, but on the back, we have this nice smooth sheet of glass, again, also curved toward the edges, which meets the chamfered edge of the metal bezel, which looks really sharp here. This glass is actually sort of pearlescent. It's not just plain white here, so it looks a little more interesting, especially when the light hits it. That works across all the colors that are available on this device. You get that nice opalescent color both on the front and on the back. Again, it just looks really simple, elegant, and well thought out. Now, quickly comparing the Galaxy S5 to the Galaxy S6, you can see the display is the same size, 5.1 inches. Now, the GS6 is slightly taller with larger bezels at the top and bottom, just slightly to accommodate the larger home button toward the bottom. But you can see the GS6 is narrower with smaller bezels, so the phone feels a little more comfortable to handle and certainly much thinner than the Galaxy S5. Now, at the top, they rearranged some of the sensors. The earpiece is a bit larger and a bit lower, and the camera module is noticeably larger on the GS6 for better low-light performance. Toward the bottom, the home button is noticeably larger, which means we do get slightly larger bezels at the top and bottom compared to the previous GS5, but the controls on either side are the same. On the left side, you can see the same location, but they're now split controls instead of a volume rocker. Now on the right side, the power button has been shifted down a bit, and they've added the nano SIM tray. Now on the top, once again, we have an IR blaster, but they've relocated the headphone jack to the bottom. Taking a look at the bottom, you can also see that we now have the speaker grill toward the bottom instead of on the back as we had with the previous Galaxy S5. And we no longer have that watertight flap covering the USB 3 port. Now we just have a USB 2.0 port. And on the back, once again, we have our protruding camera modules as well as the heart rate monitor, which has been repositioned. Now, when you first set up your Galaxy S6, you're prompted to set up the fingerprint scanner. So let's go ahead and do that manually. I'm going to go right to our settings panel. I'm going to go to lock screen and security. I'm going to go to fingerprints. I'm going to use the finger I already set up here. And now we're going to add a new fingerprint. So again, the process is very similar to the iPhone. It actually coaches you through the process as it images your finger. You can also use your fingerprint for web sign-in or verify your Samsung account. Now, you will also need to establish a backup password with one number and one letter. So we're all set to go. Just tap and hold the home button here, scans your fingerprint pretty quickly, and unlocks it for you. Now, for the most part, it works in any orientation here, sideways or vertically. All right, so let's take a look at our interface. So this is Android 5.0 skinned with a new and improved version of TouchWiz. Now it stays pretty close to the Android 5.0 design scheme here. So it's pretty simple, pretty flat, colorful. It just looks really nice. They've really simplified it, and I think it looks much better than before, although it's still pretty familiar TouchWiz here. So you have your expandable notifications, or you can clear them all out, and you can see your quick setting toggles right from the lock screen. Of course, you can adjust your screen brightness and more. Now, from that lock screen, you can also swipe up to quickly launch into the camera. As you can see, it launches very quickly. The camera is always on standby and ready to go. You can also quickly launch into your phone dialer. Now, the great thing here is that when you're on the lock screen, you can just double tap the home button to launch the camera. So if the device is just locked and you want to quickly access the camera, just double tap the home button. Again, really quickly accessed. So from the home screen, we can swipe through our home pages. You can swipe all the way to the right to get to our briefing, which is powered by Flipboard. So this is pretty familiar here. It's new and improved, looks a little bit better, but it basically aggregates all these news stories, and you can modify them here. So if you go up to settings, you can turn off certain feeds here. So if you don't want news, you can turn that off. Now, if you want to modify what appears in these feeds, you can select specific types of categories. So if you want weather, just select it. If you want Mideast news and that sort of thing. And of course, that extends to all of these categories. Now, you can remove this if you do not want this here at all. All you have to do is pinch out here like so to edit your home screens. So if you want to remove this, just uncheck it and it disappears. Now you can select which one you want to be the home screen by tapping the home icon just above it. You can also just drag and drop these pages up to delete, or you can add new pages. Now you can also change the screen layout here. So you can go with 4x4, which is here by default, 4x5 or 5x5 to squeeze more onto each home screen. This is also where we'll find all of our widgets. So we can drag and drop these widgets to our home screen like so if we want, or if you don't want them, just take it up to remove. We also have our wallpapers here, and you can select whether you want your home screen lock screen or home and lock screen set, and you can choose from your own gallery or select one of the pre-installed wallpapers. We also have our themes, and there's lots to pick from. Now, this completely changes the icon pack, the sound profile, the fonts, that sort of thing. So you can go to the store to buy additional themes. There's not a whole lot to pick from right now. So for example, if you want modern and simple, you can select this theme, download it, it's free. Now I can directly apply this theme, but what I want to do is show you how to access these themes. So I'm going to So you can see all the themes you have available on this device, and you can quickly access them. So for example, if I want that purple theme, just click apply. So this completely changes the entire design of the user interface, from the folder icons to the folder layouts, to the drop-down notification shade and coloring, to the fonts and sounds and that sort of thing. Now, personally, I'm not a big fan of purple, so let's go back to the default theme. Now I can jump to our home pages here. You can no longer scrub to them using those little icons like you could with the previous version of TouchWiz. Now taking a look at our drop-down notification shade, you can see with a single gesture, it brings down both your notifications and your quick setting toggles. There's no two steps to it like there used to be. If you remember, you used to be able to use a two-finger gesture to bring down all of your quick setting toggles and bypass the drop-down notifications. Now the interface is pretty familiar here. When you swipe to adjust your screen brightness, it actually drops everything out of the way so you can see your screen brightness changing. You can also select auto and more. You also have S Finder, which will allow you to search the entire device, which has been improved again here. So if you just want to search, for example, let's go Android. Now that search is broken down by settings, Chrome, My Files, and web search here, or you can limit this by time, category, location if applicable, and tags. We also have Quick Connect, which allows us to see wireless devices nearby that we can connect to, such as printers, television, mirroring, or DLNA equipment for broadcasting our media, or other Samsung devices where we may want to share content with. Now, taking a look at some of these quick setting toggles, you can see we have power saving mode. So this will activate power saving mode and you get to more controls by tapping and holding on that icon here. So you can start power saving mode and it'll tell you exactly what's going on. We can also go back here to get back to where we were. So if we don't want power saving mode on, let's just click that off. Of course, we have airplane mode. Do not disturb here. So if you want to turn off your notifications, or if you want to change the behavior, hold on it, takes you to that control panel. You can schedule do not disturb and allow exceptions and more. We also have a handy flashlight toggle for turning on the LED light. And I can also modify these quick settings by going to edit here. A certain number of them, so if you can remove as many as you want, but you're limited to how many you can add, so you have to bump one of them out of your way. But you can see the additional ones that are available, such as screen mirroring, smart stay, which is returning once again, ultra power saving mode, which is a little different than the standard power saving mode, NFC, private mode, and more. So ultra power saving mode is kind of a limp home mode. We've seen this before here, so you can see we get a very dim grayscale screen interface with only basic apps that are needed, such as phone dialing, messaging, and internet browsing. Now, in terms of these Android navigation keys, they have dual purposes. So, for example, we have our home button, pretty familiar stuff. Hit it once, takes you to the home screen. You can double tap to launch into the camera. Also tap and hold it to launch into Google Now. We also have our recent apps here, so we get that overview, pretty familiar from stock Android 5.0, so you can swipe them all away to dismiss them. You also have a close all button if you want. Now, if you tap and hold on this, this actually brings up the split screen view. Now, it's a much simpler interface, but you can select any app you want to open side by side. So, for example, if I want Chrome here and Gmail, opens one on the top, one on the bottom, and I can resize it like so. And the active window is highlighted in blue, so when I tap that circle, I can actually act upon that specific window here. So I can maximize this window to fill up the screen. I can minimize it, or I can copy text from this side to the other, or swap them between the top and bottom like so, or just close them by hitting the X. So if I want to close it, just close it out of the way. Now I can also get a pop-out view just by swiping from the upper right or upper left corner. So you get this little window that you can move around and resize. And certain windows will only resize to certain ways here. You can also tap this circle icon to again act upon it to copy text, minimize the window, maximize it, or close it. If you minimize the window, you get this little floating badge which hovers in the background here, and you can continue using your device and bring this forward when you need it, which works pretty nicely. Or if you hit the home button, it also goes to this little icon view. Now, I can do this with up to 5 apps at once. You can have 5 individual windows open at once, and if you hit the home button, they all minimize here. Or if you tap and hold on them, you can actually take it up to remove to disable them. Or if you bring this forward, you can also snap it up to the top here to maximize the window. Generally, I'm really impressed by how well this all works together. It's very smooth and quick and nice and reliable, and definitely better than I've seen in the past. Now, from within our recent apps, you can actually pop out some of these windows. Just tap and hold on them. You get this little pop-up viewer. Alternatively, you can also activate split screen view. For apps that are eligible for pop-out or split screen view, you'll see this little icon next to the close button, which looks like 2 rectangles. So if you tap that, it will load the app into a split screen view up top, and then you have to select another one for the bottom here. So you can either select one of the open windows or open up a separate app here. So let's go ahead and select YouTube, and we have our split screen view. Now, taking a look at our new app drawer, Samsung has been pretty modest here. They haven't preloaded a bunch of Samsung apps like they used to on previous generations. do give us some editing options up here. All I have to do is go up to edit, and apps that are available for uninstallation or disabling are highlighted with this little icon up here. So if you want to disable it or uninstall it, you can. Of course, a bunch of apps are not eligible, and unfortunately, you can't hide them like you used to be able to do on previous versions of TouchWiz. Of course, we also have foldering here, and if you want a folder, you have to be within the editing mode here, so you can drag and drop on top of each app here and create new folders. Now, you have options like changing the color of the folder, like so. Basically, it just changes the outline color, and of course, you can change the name. And if you just want to remove a folder, just go ahead and remove it. It takes it out of the folder, puts it back within the app drawer. Now, you can also order these by alphabetically if you want. So if you start rearranging them, just go back to alphabetical mode, puts it all back into order. In terms of our app selection, of course, we have a folder full of Google apps. We have some T-Mobile apps that came with this carrier. We also have some social apps that came pre-installed like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and Instagram. We have some Samsung apps like Milk Music and Milk Video. We also have a nice file manager here, allows us to break everything down by images, video, audio, documents, and more. So a nice quick way of accessing all your storage. We also have a folder with some Microsoft apps here, including OneDrive, OneNote, and Skype. We also have an all-new S Health app. This is where you can use your heart rate monitor for monitoring your blood oxygen level, your heart rate, and quite a few other things like UV as well. So you can see your water intake you can manage here, your stress level. You can manage your height and weight, how much you're running, your activity level, and everything like that is managed here. You can also add additional items. So you can add cycling, walking, hiking, sports, sleep, food intake, water intake, as well as caffeine. You also have goals, programs, and quite a few others here. Now, if you want to measure your heart rate, just go right here to click measure and just press your finger against the heart rate monitor. It lights up and will start monitoring your heart rate. And you can actually see we now get live feedback, which is kind of nice. So as you can see, a fairly high heart rate here. I can click save it to my history. You can also measure your blood oxygen level. Again, just use the heart rate monitor and it will actually show you your live results. Sam's also thrown in this smart management utility, allows us to clean our storage and our RAM. So if you want to manage your RAM here, you can end specific tasks if you want. You can also go to your battery life here. It allows us to see how much battery we have estimated left. You can turn on power saving measures. We can see our device security settings as well as our storage. Also included is the Peel Smart Remote Control app, which is really easy to set up. Again, it uses that IR blaster on the top to control your AV equipment. All you have to do is input your zip code, your cable provider, and your equipment, and you can quickly access that equipment right from your phone. So you have a remote control panel for your TV or your cable box. And you can also switch between different rooms. If you want to set up different rooms, you can, which is kind of nice here. So I can add a different room. I can add different devices. What's up, guys? Mike here, the Detroit Borg, checking out the new Galaxy Note 5, which picks up a really sleek all metal and glass design.
What's up, guys? Mike here, the Detroit Borg, checking out the new Galaxy Note 5, which picks up a really sleek all metal and glass design.
Detroit Borg. Please stay clear of the doors. الرجاء ابتعادا من الأبواب. Next station, international departure. المحطة القادمة محطة المغادرة الدولي. Next station, international departure. المحطة القادمة.
International departure. المحطة القادمة.
Hey guys, this is Mike, the Detroit Borg, with a look at the new 24-inch iMac, which is the direct successor to the 21.5-inch Intel-based 4K iMac. And this is the first complete redesign of the iMac since 2012. That's almost a 10-year run, so this is long overdue, and there's a lot to talk about, especially in terms of design. But this design takes advantage of the new Apple Silicon architecture. So we get an extremely compact internal design, which freed the designers to significantly reduce the overall size and volume of the iMac while giving us a much larger screen. And this is sort of a return to the idea of the original iMac, which was a much more fun design available in lots of colors with an extreme attention to detail, which we'll get into. So getting to the unboxing of an iMac, it's been a while since unboxing an iMac was kind of a new experience because they haven't redesigned the iMac in 10 years. Now this time the packaging design is geared toward environmentally friendly materials. So everything is paper or biodegradable. So unlike previous iMac unboxings, you open this one flat on a table as opposed to vertical. If you open up vertical, basically the iMac will be upside down. So it's a little confusing at first. And the presentation here is pretty unique. So you have these arrows on either side of the box, which are incidentally also color coordinated to the iMac, which tell you to spread the box sides apart, which basically opens up the box for you and allows you to take the iMac out of its cradle. Below the iMac is all of the accessories, and this is where things will vary depending on the accessory configuration you went with. In my case, of course, I wanted to see everything that's available, so I got them all. I got the upgraded keyboard with the numeric keypad and both the trackpad and the mouse. The Magic Keyboard is a pretty familiar design, but it has been tweaked for this new iMac. So it includes a more rounded design at the corners, but also some new keys. One of them is a new Touch ID sensor, which replaces the eject button. That Touch ID sensor basically looks like it came off an older iPad, but it works exactly the same. They've also reassigned the functions on the F4 through F6 keys. So we get Spotlight Search, Dictation, and Do Not Disturb. Next up is the color-coordinated Magic Trackpad, which has also been redesigned with more rounded corners to match the new keyboard. Otherwise, this works like every other Magic Trackpad we've seen before. This is a solid-state device, so it replicates the sensation of a click, but doesn't have a mechanical click. So that means we get consistent clicking performance across the entire surface of the trackpad, not just at the bottom. And lastly is the Magic Mouse 2, which received no update besides the color. So this is the same design you either love or hate. So we get that multi-touch gesture service on the top, which also has a mechanical click, and the lightning port on the bottom, which means you cannot charge and use the mouse at the same time, which remains a very controversial sticking point for this design. But all of these devices recharge via a lightning port, and they all have an on and off switch. And of course, you have some detailed color coordination going on here, right down to the inserts for the lightning port and the plastic rails on the back of the Magic Mouse. And to think they have to do this with 7 different iMacs. That's a big departure from the silver and black design we've had for over a decade. So that color coordination extends all the way to the cables themselves, including this new braided style lightning cable for recharging your accessories. Even the paperwork is color coordinated. In my case, it's blue, but that color coordination extends to the most important thing that comes out of this box, which is the two-toned Apple stickers to go with the two-tone finish of the iMac. Now that's attention to detail. Next up is something that's quite different for an iMac, and that's an external power supply. So this is a first for an iMac. Now, the advantages of having an external power supply is that it keeps the heat out of the body of the iMac, so there's less need for cooling. It also means that if the power supply fails, you don't have to take apart the entire iMac to fix it. One of the clever things about this 143-watt power supply is that it incorporates a gigabit Ethernet port in the upgraded model. Now, the integrated power cable is also graded for durability and color match right down to the two-tone design, but this connector is a MagSafe style connector, another first for an iMac. And of course, this connector is doing more than just supplying power, it's also passing data for the Ethernet port. And again, I have to point out the fact that even the inside of this connector matches the color of the iMac. By the way, this power supply, at least if you get the one with the Ethernet port, is a bit larger than the 96-watt power supply that comes with the 16-inch MacBook Pro. But thankfully, this cable is long enough for the power supply to reach the floor, even if you have an extra tall desk. Moving on to the very well-protected iMac, we have a few layers to get through before we can start using it. So we do have an envelope wrapping the iMac, which is very similar to previous iMacs. So again, this is sort of a paper material, and you'll see that little recycle icon on the back. You just sort of have to pull these tabs in order to free it up and pull it off the iMac. But of course, we got more going on here. So we have this nice bright white screen protector, which has the hello icon on the front, which is also part of the boot up sequence. Now we just have to peel this off in one sheet, so you can see the tabs along the side to make this clean and easy. It is one sheet of glass with a sort of blue tint at the bottom edge to give it a little more style. But obviously, no Apple logo this time. We also have a piece of plastic covering the aluminum back panel, which is also fairly easy to peel off. We also have a little piece of plastic just behind the stand that's covering the MagSafe power connector, I guess to prevent dust from collecting inside of it. And lastly, we have a single strip of plastic covering the entire rim of the iMac. So just one peel will pull it all the way off. Just make sure you don't knock over the iMac in the process. In terms of design, this iMac is definitely a big departure from the previous, but it does pick up a lot of familiar design cues, such as the chin along the bottom. It also resurrects some old design cues, such as the white bezel surrounding the screen, which we've seen on previous iMacs. Now, this two-tone color is very important to the design of these iMacs. So when you look at the iMac front on, the keyboard, the mouse, the stand, and the chin are sort of color coordinated. When you flip it around, you'll see a two-tone effect with that dark blue on the back of the iMac. Now, interesting enough, we do have a glossy Apple logo on the back, and that light blue matches the light blue on the chin, even though these two can never be seen at the same time. So when you pick your iMac color, perhaps the most important color you're going to look at is what you see on the front. So although that deep blue color on the back is really striking and really nice looking, it is sort of a secondary color when you consider that it's likely facing the wall and you won't see it most of the time. In terms of I/O, this is going to be a pretty familiar story for Apple. Everything is USB Type-C / Thunderbolt 3 / USB 4. In this case, the standard iMac gets two Thunderbolt 3 / USB 4 ports, which are good for 40 gigs per second. In the upgraded model, they add two additional USB Type-C ports, which are USB 3, which support up to 10 gigs per second. Now, because the iMac is so thin, the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack has been relocated to the left edge of the iMac. And if you're looking closely, you'll see that even the USB Type-C connectors and the headphone jack have matching dark blue inserts. The new MagSafe power connector on the iMac does solve some problems that obviously come up with such a thin design. It's very low profile, but it's also very easy to connect. There's no alignment needed. It just basically snaps into place because the design is circular. So basically it's omnidirectional. You can basically just bring the plug right next to the connector and it snaps into place by itself. Now, unlike the MagSafe connectors from MacBooks, which were designed to come off really easily, these are on there very securely, so they're not meant to be removed often. And obviously, you wouldn't do that on a desktop. Although the Apple logo isn't backlit, it does have a Wi-Fi antenna behind it, which does support Wi-Fi 6, and we also have Bluetooth 5.0. The new stand on this iMac adopts a design very similar to the Pro Display XDR. It's a much lower profile, both side to side and back to back, compared to the previous iMac. The hinge for the stand is also mounted externally, as opposed to the previous design, which was mounted internally. Again, that keeps this design very slim and minimal. Fortunately for this aluminum stand, we do have these rubber feet on the bottom edge, which keep it nice and protected and also prevent it from sliding around on the table. And of course, it's also color matched. Unfortunately, the stand cannot be removed externally for a Visa mount. You have to take apart the entire iMac to get to it. So if you want a Visa mount, you'll have to order that when you order your iMac. And that basically applies to every part of this configuration. This iMac is a fully integrated design, so you cannot upgrade any part of it after you've bought it. And as always, the power button is along the back, but it's concave, so it's easy to feel for. By far the biggest upgrade with this new design is the larger display. So we get a device that's roughly the same size as the 21.5-inch model, but we get a 24-inch screen. This is a 4.5K screen instead of 4K, and that's largely to achieve the same pixel density of 218 ppi, which is good for Retina resolution on an iMac. But this is also a DCI-P3 panel, which supports the wide color space. So this is a very nice, vibrant, and colorful panel. It's not terribly bright at 500 nits, but that's also very consistent with other Mac models. But unlike the 4K iMac, this does get True Tone technology, which means this can adapt the color and white balance of the display to the ambient lighting conditions. In terms of glare and reflection, it does seem at first that with an all-glass front panel, you would see more of it than the previous design. But overall, the anti-reflective properties are very similar. So there is some mitigation here, but it's not perfect. But the other benefit of this white bezel is that it limits how much reflection you see in this glass panel. So you can kind of see why they did not give this an all-black design, because if it were, you probably see more reflection, especially in that chin. Now, we've had a 24-inch iMac before, but if you compare them side by side, you can see there are some differences, and one of them is that the new 24-inch iMac is actually rounded up from 23.5 inches. And it's also a widescreen 16:9 aspect ratio versus 16:10. So overall, this is a slightly smaller 24-inch screen than we've seen before. Naturally, they also had to color coordinate the display, and that comes down to both the screensaver and the wallpapers. So we get this really cool Hello screensaver, and you can change the color, although by default, it will be set to the color of the iMac you've purchased. So if you want orange on your blue iMac, you could certainly go for that. In terms of the wallpaper, we have both a dark and light wallpaper, and again, you can select the color you prefer. But again, by default, they've already matched it to your iMac. Another welcome and overdue improvement is the new 1080p FaceTime HD camera, replacing the 720p from last generation. But the big news here is the new image signal processor that's carried aboard the M1 chip. That's the same technology that came from the iPhone and the iPad, and it makes a huge difference. But we also get a huge microphone upgrade. Just behind the camera on the back of the iMac, you'll see two microphones at the top edge and one right behind it. Now, Apple calls this studio-grade microphones, and although that's kind of a stretch, they are pretty impressive overall in terms of their performance. So let's go ahead and take a look and a listen to the difference. So here's an example of the built-in camera and the triple microphone setup, which does improve both audio and video quality quite a bit, although it's still a 1080p camera. And here is the truly outdated 21.5-inch 4K iMac camera, which definitely looks pretty fuzzy and dark. In terms of the chin design on this iMac, the interesting thing here is that it's more purposeful because the entire computer is located in that thin strip below the display. Everything lives there, from the CPU to the RAM to the storage to the speakers, the I/O, everything is in that space. That really wasn't the case before, so that chin on the previous iMac design was less integral than it is now. Now, if you look at the bottom edge of the iMac, you'll see a grill from edge to edge, which houses the speakers and the cooling for the CPU. So the cooling for the CPU is right in the middle. Now, if you really ramp up this computer, you will hear the fan running, although it's not as loud as the 4K iMac. That got perhaps 4 times as loud as this one does. Apple's audio engineers have produced some amazing audio on small devices in the past, and this is no exception on the new iMac. We actually have a 6-speaker design with force-canceling subwoofers, which improve the performance of the subwoofers without distortion. But they've been able to work in Dolby Atmos and spatial audio, and the thing that really stands out about these speakers is just how immersive the audio is. It's very clear, well separated, so there's a nice distinction between the mid-range highs and lows, and it's quite a bit more immersive than the typical iMac speakers, although we don't get the same low-frequency punch that we see on something like the iMac Pro or the 27-inch iMac. Although it's not standard, this is the first iMac with a Touch ID sensor, and it's also the first Touch ID sensor that has a wireless connection to the computer. And in order to achieve this securely, they've incorporated a dedicated chip inside the keyboard, which is able to the data to the computer to make sure it stays secure. Now, you can just lightly tap the Touch ID sensor to unlock and take you directly to the desktop, but you can also tap that key in order to lock the screen again. So the base configuration starts at $1299, and all versions get the Apple M1 chip, although the base configuration gets a 7-core GPU instead of 8-core GPU, just like the base configuration of the MacBook Air. But this is the same M1 chip in MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro, the Mac Mini, and the new iPad Pros. 256 gigs of SSD storage is standard, with 8 gigs of unified RAM. You can upgrade to 2 terabytes of storage and 16 gigs of RAM. So the most you can spend is about $2,600 on this iMac. In terms of performance, there's no surprises here because this is the same chip that's in all of those other Macs, and performance is pretty much equivalent to the Mac Mini, although I am getting slightly better results on the single-core score. So this might place the iMac 24-inch at the top of the Mac range in terms of single-core performance. Also, a massive upgrade is the speed of the SSD, which actually smokes the hard disk drive in the old 4K iMac. What's a little confusing about this computer is that it seems like it's just a home desktop PC for the family, but in reality, this is an extremely capable and powerful computer that can edit multiple streams of 4K video, drive a 6K external display, and be able to edit 100 megapixel photographs with ease. Now, for me, this computer is more than capable enough of replacing my iMac Pro in my daily workflow. The only drawback is the limit in terms of the I/O. So although I can attach a bunch of dongles to the back of this computer and get what I need, it's still not as slick as having an integrated solution for an SD card slot or a standard USB-A port. So at $1299 or $1499, which is the configuration I would recommend, I think this is the best value in terms of the Mac lineup today. But of course, this is only the first stage of the iMac redesign. We still have a bigger iMac on the way. I'm really looking forward to it. So it should come with even better processing power and hopefully more I/O. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed this look at the 24-inch iMac. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up to let me know. And I'll see you again in my next video. What's up, guys? Mike here, the Detroit Board, with two new flagship phones from OnePlus, the 8 and the 8 Pro. We're going to compare them side by side in this video because there are quite a few differences. Now, they've sent these phones in these large press kits, so these are not what you'll get when you receive yours, but of course they do make for nice unboxing experiences. They've also sent me their optional wireless charger, which works with the new 8 Pro. More details on that later, but first let's get to the phones. So once we remove these sleeves, revealing these never settle boxes, all we have to do is lift up the lid, and the first thing we'll get are these reviewer packets. So these are really nice, well-illustrated information packets that tell us about the specs and features of the new phones. So again, these cases are optional, but they reveal right away that the OnePlus 8 Pro has a different camera design than the OnePlus 8, and of course we'll get into that. Next up, we have the retail packaging. So these bright red boxes are what you will get when you buy your OnePlus. The boxes themselves are very similar, but the one for the Pro is a bit taller and thicker than the one for the 8. But they make it easy to get into these boxes by putting these tabs on the back to remove the plastic wrap. So lifting up the lids, there's a difference in terms of how these are packaged. You can see that the OnePlus 8 on the left has its paperwork in a packet on top of the phone, while the paperwork is inside the tray for the 8 Pro. The paperwork is identical between each phone, just resized for the packaging. One of the more interesting pieces here is the SAR value, which is the radio frequency emission of these phones. That might have something to do with the new radios inside these phones, which includes 5G and Wi-Fi 6 support. We also get a matching set of OnePlus stickers, including reference to the smooth fluid AMOLED display. As always, we get the invitation letter from the OnePlus CEO. And on the back of that invitation letter is our SIM ejection tool. So if you want to read this, just pause your screen. All the accessories are identical. The only thing that differs here is the included case for the OnePlus 8 Pro. It's a pretty nice, clear TPU-style case with the Never Settle branding embossed on the outside. Although wireless charging is exclusive to the 8 Pro, both phones get the exact same Warp 30T wired charger. So these are 30-watt chargers that can rapidly recharge these phones from 1% to 50% in under half an hour. And it can do this without overheating the phone, so that means you won't suffer any sort of performance limitations while it's charging. In terms of the color selection, both phones are available in Glacial Green or Onyx Black, but the colors I have here are exclusive to each model. So the Ultramarine Blue is exclusive to the 8 Pro, and the Interstellar Glow is exclusive to the OnePlus 8, at least at the time of this video. In terms of Interstellar Glow, it's more of a special effect than a color in itself, because it changes so much depending on the lighting conditions. Now, it's extremely reflective, and that can be a problem when you're photographing something. I've actually found that it reflects too much back at a subject and distorts that light. So personally, I would prefer something matte or just put a case on it. But I really love this Ultramarine Blue. It has this nice satin color which hides fingerprints and looks really nice as the light changes across its surface. For the most part, both of these phones look like scaled versions of each other. Both of them have the rounded edges, so that means the display is pretty steeply rounded toward the edges, and the back glass is also rounded to a very symmetrical design that sort of evokes Samsung phones. So that means we have a really nice smooth edge to grip the phone. It also looks really nice, but like all curved displays, it does cause unintentional presses of the display, which can be annoying. It's mitigated if you're using a case, but if you're using it without a case, I think it becomes a problem pretty often. But again, we have a stainless steel frame, and the antenna design seems to be identical, which makes sense. So we have the antenna breaks in roughly the same position. At the bottom edge, we'll find one of our stereo speakers, along with our USB-C port and a double-sided nano SIM tray, which incidentally does have a water gasket around it that is red, which is a pretty subtle call out to OnePlus's favorite color. Along the right side is a pretty familiar setup with the power button just below the 3-position alert slider, and on the left side we'll find our volume rocker. On the top edge is one of the microphones along with a ridge on the OnePlus 8 Pro design, which is not there on the OnePlus 8. Now both phones have the exact same earpiece design, which is discreetly integrated into the top edge of the phone. It's a nice wide speaker, which also acts as the second half of the stereo speaker setup, and it's nice and clear. Now, if you look really closely under the right lighting conditions, you'll see the ambient light sensor and proximity sensor really discreetly tucked into that thin bezel. In fact, the screen protector on the OnePlus 8 is actually cut out specifically for those sensors, which tipped me off to where they were. One of the bigger changes from the 7 Pro from last year is the elimination of the pop-up camera in favor of a hole punch camera, which means the camera is integrated into the display, and it's a really small opening as well. So it's able to pretty neatly and discreetly hide in the status bar of the operating system. Now, I definitely miss the sort of mechanical magic of that pop-up camera, but it is more solid state, so it should be more robust and obviously more water resistant. Face Unlock is still here as well, and it works extremely quickly, although I'm not sure how secure it is. But it does have a new feature that lights up the display to wash your face in light, so you can see your face even in a pitch black room. And whenever the camera is in use, you'll see that little animation around the camera bezel. Now, what's interesting in my case is that the OnePlus 8 is the only one with the included screen protector, which OnePlus is famous for. The 8 Pro does not have it. Personally, I don't like the screen protector, so I would prefer to not have it on here, but I know a lot of people expect it. Both phones also have in-screen fingerprint readers, which use light to basically see through the display, and it's still the fastest and most reliable in-screen fingerprint reader I've ever used. In terms of these displays, the 3 primary differences are size, resolution, and refresh rate. So we have a 6.55-inch screen versus a 6.78-inch screen. So that gives us a resolution of 1080p versus 1440p. So that's good for 402 pixels per inch on the 8 versus 513 pixels per inch on the Pro. And like a lot of other slim bezel smartphones, these are extra tall displays with an aspect ratio of 20:9 or 19:8:9. Now, we've seen the Fluid AMOLED displays before, but this time it's 90 Hz for the OnePlus 8 or 120 Hz for the OnePlus 8 Pro. Now, a typical smartphone has a 60 Hz refresh rate, so 90 or 120 Hz is a big improvement. It basically means that things look a lot smoother, especially when you're scrolling. So it gives the impression of a much faster and smoother operating system. Both of these displays are HDR panels with some software features to boost the HDR performance, especially in video and gaming. But the Pro does get a 10-bit panel, similar to the Galaxy S20. So that means it can produce up to 60 times more colors more accurately than a standard smartphone display. But side by side, these displays are identically calibrated, so they look very similar to each other. It's really hard to tell the difference. And in terms of video, it does support the HDR10 standard. In terms of audio, again, we have stereo speakers, and they're pretty well balanced, although the top speaker is more prominent. We do have support for Dolby Atmos, and for the most part, the speakers are loud and clear with a nice wide soundscape. Wireless charging is something that we've long wanted from a OnePlus device, but they've always been reluctant to offer it because it's a lot slower than their wired charger. But they've been able to design a wireless charging solution that works just as fast as their wired charger. So this is their Warp Charge 30 wireless device, which is sold separately. So just like a wired charger, it can charge your phone up to 50% in only 30 minutes. The OnePlus 8 Pro is still a wireless Qi device, which means it can be charged by any wireless charger that supports it. But in order to get these speeds, you do need the specific charging dock, at least for now. The 8 Pro also supports reverse wireless charging. So if you turn this on within the system, you can wirelessly charge other devices like a smartphone or a set of headphones. Specs are almost identical for both of these phones. They both get the same Snapdragon 865 CPU with the Adreno 650 GPU. That's the latest hardware used on most flagship phones today. And both of them have 2 different storage tiers, 120 gigs or 256 gigs. And that's fast UFS 3.0 storage. That also corresponds with either 8 or 12 gigs of RAM. In terms of synthetic benchmarking, both devices perform roughly the same, although I did get better performance out of the 8 for some reason, just slightly. But it is significantly better than the 7 Pro from last year and is consistent with performance out of the Galaxy S20. Both of these phones have the exact same radios as well, so they get Wi-Fi 6 support, Bluetooth 5.1, and the X55 5G modem. 5G isn't widely available on a lot of networks, but at least these phones are future-proof. Both of these phones also get huge batteries, 4,300 milliamp hours for the 8 and 4,510 for the 8 Pro. So in my experience with the 8 Pro, after using it for about a week, I'm able to get about 7 to 8 hours of on-screen time. And that's with 120 Hz refresh rate and full resolution and taking no battery saving measures at all. In terms of these cameras, at first glance, it really does look like the Pro just has one extra camera that the 8 doesn't have. But in reality, they have completely different camera systems with different optics and different sensors. In terms of the OnePlus 8's triple camera setup, toward the top we have the 16 megapixel ultra wide camera, the 48 megapixel camera toward the middle, and the macro camera at the bottom. In terms of the Pro, we have a 48 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, a 48 megapixel main camera, and a color filter camera toward the bottom. And off toward the side is the 3x telephoto camera. And that vertical strip includes a microphone along with a laser assisted autofocusing mechanism, which is exclusive to the Pro. It basically means we have a quicker and more accurate AF system on the Pro than the standard 8. So both of these phones have 48 megapixel wide angle cameras, but they're using different sensors. The Pro's using the Sony IMX689, which has 1.12 micron pixels, versus the Sony IMX586 on the 8, which has 0.8 micron pixels. So bigger is better for better low light sensitivity. The Pro also has a 7-element lens instead of a 6-element lens, so a much larger sensor and better optics. The Pro does get a dedicated telephoto camera, which is 8 megapixels with optical image stabilization. That helps the Pro achieve a 30x zoom. A lot of that is hybrid zoom, so it's a combination of that high 48 megapixel sensor alongside this optical zoom. The standard 8 only achieves 10x zoom, which is mostly just digital cropping. One of the things that really impressed me about the main camera on the 8 Pro is how well it preserves dynamic range without flattening or softening an image. That makes this camera especially fun to use in backlit shots or shots with extreme contrast. It seems to be able to find the right exposure for the subject without overexposing the levels in the background. It's also able to do this while preserving incredible sharpness and color with virtually no noise, so it doesn't look processed. Performance is pretty similar on the standard 8, but it's not quite as good in low light. In terms of real low light shots, again, I'm really impressed by what the 8 Pro does. It's able to find the right color and white balance for the shot, bring up the exposure without losing detail, and seems to be able to completely eliminate noise without losing detail. Unfortunately, both the wide angle and the main camera seem to have similar performance in low light. That's not the case for the 8. While the wide-angle camera on the 8 looks very similar to the Pro, the ultra-wide camera definitely contrasts with the performance of the main camera. A really useful new feature, at least to me, is Smart Pet Capture. This works on both the 8 Pro and the 8, and basically can keep track of your cat or dog's face to maintain focus and exposure even while they're moving. Video also looks fantastic on these cameras. We get 4K up to 60 frames per second with excellent dynamic range, great color, and detail. One of the things that really stands out about these cameras, however, is stabilization. Some of the best I've seen on any smartphone. So we have optical and electronic stabilization. So a handheld video is very smoothed out, but it looks natural without the skips and jumps that tend to happen with process stabilization. Next up, let's dig into this operating system. So this is Android 10 with Oxygen OS, which is pretty close to stock Android. There's a lot of features to still talk about here. One of the features they promote is Dark Theme 2.0, which you can activate by going to Settings. Under Settings, you'll find a customization panel, and from here, you can go to Tone and select Colorful, Light, which is default, or Dark. So this will apply system-wide and across apps that support it. So that's quite a few apps such as Safari. And then we're going to take a look at this customization panel because there's a lot here. So you can change your wallpapers, and we do have these new live interactive wallpapers, which will respond to the weather conditions, and there's quite a few of them. Now, I chose my own wallpaper just so I can have a consistent look to show the differences between these devices. So I'm just going to go back and stick with the one I chose here. We also have our fingerprint animation. So we have different fingerprints we can choose from. Now, the one I have on by default is Energy, but we have Cosmos, Ripple, Stripe, as well as none. So you just want a plain one. We also have the Horizon light. So this will light up the edges of the phone in a color you prefer. So there's just 4 to pick here. I just go with blue. And again, that will flash notifications when the screen is off or locked. So if it's laying face down, it will light up your table for you. So that's one of the benefits of that edge screen. We also have our clock styles, and there's many to pick from here. So if you want something more minimal, or if you want to see your notification badges and the calendar. We can also customize the accent color for our buttons. Blue is on by default. So you can see different palettes depending on whether you choose dark theme or light theme. We also have our system icons. You can go from square to circle to teardrop or round rectangle. And we also have our icon pack, so you can go with Oxygen OS or the hydrogen theme, or you can pick something else from one of the stores. And we also have our fonts, so you can go with Android's Roboto theme or OnePlus's, and that's what I'm using. And there's also a lot to take a look at under display settings, and there's quite a few differences here between these phones when it comes to the display. So for example,
comfort tone. This will automatically adapt the white balance to the ambient conditions in the room, which appears not to be available for the OnePlus 8. The 8 Pro also has these video enhancement features, but the OnePlus 8 reduces it to just this vibrant color effect, which you can apply to video. So it's a little less sophisticated. So in terms of the Vibrant Color Effect Pro, again, does a very similar thing, which is to enhance colors. And then we have motion graphics smoothing. This is the big thing. This will actually improve the frame rate or interpolate the frame rate for 120 hertz for all video. There's some differences under advanced as well. Now you can change the resolution that's displayed on the OnePlus 8 Pro, but you can't do that on the standard OnePlus 8 because it's a standard 1080p screen. In this case, you can drop it down to 1080p, and this will change the resolution or bump it back up to QHD+. And when you get that, or when you turn that on, you get the option to enable auto power saving. So this will reduce the resolution to full HD plus when it's not needed. We can also adjust the refresh rate, so we can go down to a standard 60 hertz to save battery life if you prefer. If you prefer to hide the camera better so it doesn't stand out as this dot on the screen, which I don't think is a big deal, you can actually black out that section of the screen so it looks like it's part of the bezel. Personally, I definitely don't prefer that. We can also customize the status bar. So we have an icon manager that allows us to select what's displayed in the status bar. So if you want to simplify what appears up top, this is where you can do it. Now, one of the first things I would recommend is going to screen calibration and choosing a different color profile. I wasn't a big fan of the vivid or natural color. It looks a little too warm. So I chose advanced with AMOLED wide gamut, and that got me that more vibrant color with the cleaner white. Under buttons and gestures, we have our settings for the alert sliders. You can assign different actions for those positions. But we also have the navigation bar and gestures. Now I've activated gestures, which means you don't have the traditional navigation bar toward the bottom. Instead, you swipe up to go home, swipe up and hold to get to your recent apps launcher. And more importantly, you can swipe in from any edge to go back instead of thumbing down here to find the back button, which I think is a big improvement. Now, by default, it also hides the bottom bar, which is that little indicator. I think that's superfluous, but if you in terms of the interface, this is pretty much Android 10, and it's extremely smooth with this 120 hertz refresh rate. So you have your Google panel when you swipe in from the left edge. Swipe down to get to your widget panel, and some of these are customized for the OnePlus device. If you go to the editor, you can see we have a few more here. So if you want, you can go ahead and drag and drop as many apps as you want into that widget panel. So we have a reading mode with two options. We have a chromatic effect, which sort of dims down the colors and warms up the screen, so it's a little more easy on the eyes, especially for reading. We also have the option to choose the mono effect. Now that completely removes the colors. We also have a night mode, so you can turn this on manually, but if we long press, we get to some of our options. So you can set this to turn on automatically at a custom time range or automatically with your sunset and sunrise of your location. You can change the color temperature, which I actually really like. You can also change the lightness of the effect. We also have a handy screen recorder. This gives us some options here. So you can change the resolution, the bit rate, the frames per second, the audio source, and more. So if we click record here, it starts recording, and we can continue navigating through our interface and demonstrating whatever we want to. And you can see the control widget up here. Click stop, and it saves it to your gallery. There's another trick on the home screen, and that's the hidden space. So from the home screen, just pinch out. This takes you to a place where you can hide apps you don't want other people to see, at least readily. Obviously, if they know that feature is there, they'll find it. But you can select whatever app you want to hide in this space. Next up, let's take a look at this camera app, which is pretty intuitive. So we can cycle between our available cameras here. So we have ultra wide, standard wide angle, and we have our zoom. Tap and hold to get to our dial, and we can zoom all the way into 30x. Now this is limited to 10x on the regular 8. But you can see we can pretty smoothly jump between these cameras like so. You'll see a transition at some points here. But otherwise, it's pretty smooth. This also works in video. So while I'm recording video, you can smoothly move between these cameras without much issue. You will see it jump occasionally like so. Otherwise, this is also limited to 10x when you're recording in video. Of course, we have slow motion, panorama, time lapse. We have a portrait mode, nightscape, and Pro mode. So Pro mode gives us precise controls or manual controls for ISO level, white balance, our aperture, our focus levels, and our exposure. Up top, we have quick toggles for our timer, our flash. We can cycle between 48 megapixels or 12 megapixels. Now, if you look at the message up here, they do recommend you shoot in 12 megapixels because it's more flexible, but 48 megapixels requires more light. Now, if you choose 48 megapixels, you do lose some features here. So, for example, you lose the telephoto camera, but you still have your ultra wide and standard wide angle. We also have a super macro mode, which is available on both devices, although the OnePlus 8 has a dedicated camera for macro that's not needed on the hardware here. Settings always has lots to take a look at here. So we have ultra shot HDR, so that's where you can turn this off. Lots of other options here, such as smart content detection, video resolution. So I have it set to 4K at 30 frames per second, but you can go for 4K at 60 frames per second or 4K Cine at both 30 or 60 frames per second. That's that ultra wide aspect ratio that takes advantage of this tall display. We also have a tripod long exposure feature. So when the phone is mounted, it's able to keep the shutter open longer for long exposure. That's something you can't really do handheld. So when it comes to pricing, these start at $699 for the 8 and $899 for the Pro. So $200 separates them. Now, if you add $100 to each of those configurations, you get double the storage and 12 gigs of RAM. So those are still relative bargains, even though they're still pretty big numbers, especially when you consider where OnePlus came from. But when you consider flagship phones with these specs cost over $1,000, these are pretty impressive devices. Now, from my perspective, the 8 Pro is one of the first OnePlus devices to really have all of the flagship features you expect with nothing missing. Usually something was missing, such as wireless charging. Not only do we get wireless charging, we get the best wireless charging solution out there. So even though similarly equipped flagship smartphones cost over $1,000, this stays under $1,000 and adds features that other smartphones like it don't have. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this look at the OnePlus 8 and the 8 Pro. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like to let me know. And I'll see you again in my next video.
Vid.
Cardamom, cloves, turmeric, cumin, cinnamon, nutmeg, saffron, coriander, and paprika.
Hey guys, I'm going down to my friend Hassan's house, so I'm going to open the door right now.
What's up, guys? Mike here, the Detroit board, with a look at the Samsung Galaxy S6 Edge. So this is kind of a premium variant of the standard GS6 with a curved display on the left-hand and right-hand side. That curved display also adds some unique software tweaks to the experience, but otherwise this phone is kind of spec for spec identical to the standard GS6, but it is $100 more expensive, so you're really paying for that curved design. So in this video, we're going to compare this to the standard GS6 to see if that display and the software tweaks are worth the price upgrade. All right, first up, let's get to the unboxing. That's the fun part. We have our little sleeve here and our clamshell box. I just need to cut the tape along the side here. All right, so let's go ahead and lift the lid. There it is, the Galaxy S6 Edge. First thing you see right away are those curved sides. So let's go ahead and pick it up. There we go. We have our little plastic sleeve. Again, all glass and metal, feels really nice in the hand. As soon as you pick it up, you can feel right away those tapered edges along the side on the left and right hand side. So the design is pretty similar to the S6. It doesn't feel dramatically different when you handle it, but you do feel those thinner edges along the side. So let's set aside for just a minute while we take a look at our contents here. So of course, we have our literature packet, which is specific to my T-Mobile version here. So let's go and slide this down. All right, so we have our terms and conditions, as well as our warranty information, our recycling pouch, our quick start guide from T-Mobile. We have our accessory guide. We have our flyer for Milk Music and Milk Video, which are Samsung services. And then we have our health and safety and warranty guide. So in terms of our accessories, again, identical to the Galaxy S6, we have our adaptive fast charger, which means 10 minutes of charging gets you about 4 hours of phone use. Now, it takes a little more than an hour to completely recharge your phone with this charger. We also have a USB 2.0 cable. Again, no USB 3 here. So the GS5, if you remember, had USB 3.0 ports. We also have our new headphones. These are kind of like EarPods, Samsung's version of EarPods. They have the same general design, but in this case, they have sleeves that go over the EarPods, which allow you to change the size of them. And they do give you 2 sizes to pick from. These headphones also include an inline remote control and microphone. Also included here is the Nano SIM tray ejector, which is kind of new for Samsung. Now, before I start up the phone, the first thing I want to do here is pop out that Nano SIM tray, which is actually located on the top as opposed to toward the side, like we see with the standard Galaxy S6. All right, so let's go ahead and start up our phone. Just going to tap and hold the power button along the right-hand side.
All right, so let's go ahead and start.
Now, taking a really close look at the design of the Galaxy S6, very similar to the very premium design of the standard GS6, we have this all glass and metal construction. In this case, we have more glass than the standard GS6 because we have that wrapped edge. So the frame is a little thinner, there's a little less metal, a little more glass. So once again, Corning Gorilla Glass 4 kind of has this pearlescent finish, which looks really nice here, picks up the light. Now the glass is kind of curved at the edges, so when it meets the metal frame, it's nice and smooth. The metal frame itself actually has this polished chamfered edge, which again looks a little like jewelry, kind of a higher end look to the Galaxy phone. Now the curve to the display is actually pretty subtle here. So the bezels look really thin along the edges, but there's actually plenty of room to grip the phone without unintentionally operating the display. It actually feels pretty comfortable here, although the edges are thinner and feel a little sharper than the more rounded and fuller feeling of the Galaxy S6. But it does feel really nice in the hand to swipe across this curved edge of the display. So on the front, we have that 5.1-inch display, and only a small sliver of the sides actually curve around the edges. Of course, we have our fingerprint sensor built into the home button, just like the standard GS6. So the button itself is a little raised and more tactile than the previous generation Galaxy phones. Of course, on either side of that, we'll find our backlit capacitive controls, which work the same. Now, on the top of the display, we'll find a flush earpiece, which is flanked by our ambient light sensor, proximity sensor, and an LED notification light. And then we have our 5-megapixel front-facing camera with a very large f1.9 aperture, which lets a lot of light in. This is a really nice camera that actually records in QHD resolution, which is a step above 1080p. So on the right side, even though we have that really thin edge, we do have our sleep-wake power button along the side, which is in a thumb-reachable location. On the left side, we'll find our volume controls mounted high toward the top. Again, very thin, but very tactile and in a very comfortable position. Now on the top, like the standard GS6 and other Samsung phones, we'll find an IR LED blaster mounted toward the center. We'll also find a microphone and our Nano SIM tray. Now on the bottom of the phone, just like on the top, we'll find our antenna insulators breaking up the metal frame. We also have our headphone jack, our USB 2.0 port, a microphone, and the side-facing speaker. Now on the back, we have that nice smooth glass back panel, which also houses our wireless charging. Once again, like the standard GS6, we have both wireless Qi and PowerMat supported in this wireless charger, so it's a true universal charging system. We also have our protruding 16-megapixel camera with optical image stabilization and 4K video recording, and we have our heart rate monitor and LED flash. Now, although the display is curved, it's pretty much identical to the standard GS6. It's 5.1 inches Super AMOLED QHD resolution, so that gives us a resolution of 1440 by 2560, good for 577 pixels per inch. That's a lot of resolution to work with. Now, there are slight differences to the measurements of the GS6 to the GS6 Edge. The Edge is slightly shorter, 142.1 millimeters versus 143.4. It's slightly narrower at 70.1 millimeters versus 70.5 millimeters, and it's slightly thicker, 7 millimeters instead of 6.8 millimeters. Now, the battery in the Edge is slightly larger, 2600 milliamp hours versus 2550 in the standard GS6. Now, if you look along the right-hand side, the volume controls are in the same place, but the ones on the Edge are a bit narrower. That's the same story with the power button along the right-hand side. Again, a slightly narrower button, and you can see the SIM tray has been relocated from right below the power button on the standard GS6 to the top on the GS6 Edge. Taking a look at the top here, you can see the microphone has been moved slightly, but otherwise everything is in the right location. And toward the bottom, basically everything is in the same location. Also, if you look at the back, basically identical. The only difference is the branding. Now, there are some other subtle design differences between the GS6 and the GS6 Edge. So if you look at the metal frame on the standard GS6, it kind of comes to a ridge along the middle here, as opposed to the flatter design of the GS6 Edge. The S6 Edge also has a little more prominent chamfered edge to the metal frame, which I think looks a little bit better. Now, there are some software tweaks from the standard GS6, and you'll find it under settings, specifically quick settings. So we have Edge Lighting, we have People Edge, Information Stream, and Night Clock. So let's talk about People Edge. Now, People Edge actually appears as a small tab on either the left-hand or right-hand side, and you can swipe in from the Edge to bring up your contacts. So you get 5 contacts you can assign to these little badges here. So I can go right here to add a new contact from my existing contacts. Now, this basically allows me to quickly access these contacts. So I can just tap on them to message them, email them, or place a phone call. Now, you can rearrange these, you can move them around or remove them. You can also go up to settings here. It takes you to the control panel for controlling these settings. So you can see My People here, so you can assign them from here as well. You can also have it alert you when picking up the phone. So if you have a pending contact from one of these assigned contacts, you'll actually get this little notification that pops up on your lock screen that tells you which contact came up, and then you can swipe in from the Edge to quickly access them. Of course, you can also completely turn this off so that little tab along the side will completely disappear. Now, if you have a pending notification from any one of these contacts, you actually get this little color key tab that you can swipe on to quickly access them. So you can either place a phone call, send an email, or place a message. We also have Edge Lighting. This actually corresponds with the assigned contacts under People Edge. So what will happen here is that if your phone is facing face down, you actually see that the side of the phone will strobe in the color that's assigned to that contact. So in my case, it's orange, so it strobes in orange. But one of the other contacts might be purple, blue, pink, or whatever, and that will strobe just to indicate the corresponding contact. Now, this works with phone calls or text messages. So for example, if you're receiving a phone call, it will strobe for you. But if you're receiving a text message, it'll blink. We also have quick reply. So if your phone is face down and you're receiving a phone call, you can tap and hold the heart rate monitor and send a canned text message, which you can modify ahead of time if you want. But basically, you just send a canned text message that tells them you'll call them back later. Now, we can also modify the notifications that light up the Edge screen. So we have missed calls, messages, and emails. We also have Information Stream. This is something that's on the lock screen, and you can manage it from here, but let's talk about what it looks like first. Now, the thing with Information Stream is that you can basically just swipe along the right-hand edge or left-hand edge, and you'll see this information stream that pops up, and you can rotate it in either orientation here. So it'll show you your time, your weather conditions if you enable it, as well as your battery status and the date. And I can swipe through this as well here, so I can see my pending notifications, which I can swipe through. So I can, for example, just tap on this. If I want to go to Instagram, tap on it, and then I can unlock the device. It takes me right to that app. And I can swipe through other panels here. So I have this Yahoo widget. I can also see I have this RSS feeder, which is a panel I added. So let's go to the manager to take a look at what you can do with this. So under Information Stream, we can manage our feeds. So we have 3 of them here by default, and you can see the ones that are available. Now, if you want to know what each one is, just tap on it, and it tells you exactly what it is. So I can see this is the briefing feed. I can see this is Yahoo News, and I can see this is Edge RSS feeds. There's some others here which are not selected. So, for example, I have Twitter Trends. I can select that. that and add it if I want. I have Yahoo Finance, and I can add that if I want. And then I have Yahoo Sports. I can go ahead and download additional ones here. There's not much to pick from, so I have RSS feeds for Edge, and then I have Who's Caller ID if I want to add that. Now, you can rearrange these panels if you want to change the order, or then when you swipe through them, just tap on Reorder, and you can slide them around. Now, to uninstall any one of these, just go up to More and go to Uninstall and select the ones that you've downloaded. Now, some of these have additional settings here. So, for example, under Briefing Feed, I can modify the notifications that appear under Briefing Feed. We can also change the Edge screen timeout from 15 seconds to 10 minutes. You can also add the weather information to the information ticker. So if you want to add that, just add Edge screen. We also have Night Clock, which will display the time and date alongside the Edge in a very dim, persistent state. One of the benefits of OLED is that it only lights the pixels you need, not the entire display. So it's fairly battery efficient, but what you have to do here is schedule the time in which this activates, but you're limited to 12-hour blocks at most. Now, you can also change the positioning of the Edge screen, so if you prefer left hand or right hand, you can select it from here. Now, with the exception of the curved edge, both displays are nearly identical. They have the same brightness, the same color profile, but there are some subtle differences that I think are worth mentioning. Now, both phones will exhibit some form of color shifting when viewed off axis. This means that the white tones of the display will darken or shift hue. However, this happens less on the GS6 Edge, which means the display looks a little bit better than the GS6 in some circumstances. Now, I'm assuming this is done out of necessity to minimize the distortion at the curved edges of the display. Now, just like the Note Edge, the GS6 Edge does exhibit some of that light bleeding along the bezel of the display, which is probably due to the curved optics of the glass picking up the light of the curved OLED panel. This is mostly noticeable when using the phone in a dark room, but I find it pretty easy to ignore, although I think wrong with wanting the phone that's just a little bit different. So now I'm curious what you guys think. Which phone do you prefer, the standard Galaxy S6 or the S6 Edge? Please let me know in the comment section below. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.
This 2 hour change your life and you will never be fat and overweight again. Rolling now. You give your sister now and you'll be guaranteed Jannah paradise. All you have to do is pay back to that creature. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us that whoever has 1, 2, or 3 sisters and treats them nice with kindness, will be guaranteed Jannah. Sisters, send this to your brothers now and share this everywhere.
Will be guaranteed Jannah. Sisters, send this to your brothers now and share this.
I just know that from the
This boss for a whole entire day.
You are already 23 seconds late to your shift. Go into the kitchen and what is with your shirt? Tuck it in.
What's up, guys? Mike here, the Detroit board, checking out the HTC Ultra. What's up, guys? Mike here, the Detroit board, checking out the HTC Ultra. So the U Ultra replaces the HTC 10 from last year and is a significantly larger phone. Now this phone has been criticized a lot for not really offering anything new or interesting among flagship smartphones, but we're going to go in depth and find out exactly what it has to offer. So what's up guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, and today we're checking out the LG V30. This is LG's top-end flagship for 2017, and it brings some familiar traits from some other flagships, but adds quite a few others as well. And it's definitely one of my favorite Android phones I've reviewed this year, so I'm going to go in-depth and explore all of its features. It goes without saying that the design and feature inspiration for the LG V30 is the Galaxy S8. It's a really nice looking phone, complete with an OLED display that goes almost to the edges of the phone. It even wraps around just slightly, but it's not quite as dramatic as it is on the Galaxy S8. But this display is a huge improvement over the LCD display from the V20 or the G6. So this is a 6-inch Quad HD Plus display. Now this gives us a resolution of 1440 by 2880, so it's a taller display, very similar to the Galaxy S8, with a 537 ppi pixel density. This is a fantastically bright and vivid display. It's one of the best I've used. It's even slightly better and brighter than the one on the Galaxy S8. To me, it looks like it has a wider color gamut. So although it looks a bit warmer compared to the Galaxy S8, it looks a bit more accurate with more vibrant colors. So this phone is covered in Corning Gorilla Glass 5 on the front and back, and it's rimmed in this polished metal frame with some antenna breaks. Very nice looking phone, and it feels great in the hand with this nice rounded symmetrical surface. So it feels very smooth and comfortable to grip. It's much less boxy than something like the G6, and certainly much more compact than the large and bulky V20 from last year. Fans of the V10 and V20 might be disappointed that we no longer have a swappable battery or a metal design. Instead, this glass design gives us wireless charging for the first time on the V series, which I think is a worthy trade-off. And of course, we also have Quick Charge 3.0 via the USB port, so you can quickly recharge the internal battery, which is 3,300 milliamp hours. One of the features that is missing here from the LG V20 is the second screen, but that's been replaced with a floating bar with most of the same features on both the lock screen and the home screen, and we're going to go in depth and explore that later. The front-facing camera is 5 megapixels with an f2.2 aperture, which is a fairly wide-angle lens, so you're able to get a lot in your shot pretty easily. Now, this only records up to 1080p, so you won't find Quad HD or even 4K here. So along the left side, we have our individual volume controls. Along the right side, we have a combination nano SIM tray and micro SD card slot, which does support up to 2 terabytes. If you look closely at that SIM tray, you'll see another feature that's very welcome, which is water resistance. So there's actually a gasket surrounding the edge of it, which keeps water out. In fact, it's IP68 rated, like a lot of other high-end smartphones today, which means you can submerge this up to 1.5 meters of water for 30 minutes. Not only is this IP68 rated, it's also military standard 810G rated, which means it's designed to survive extreme environmental conditions and shock. Down below, we have a USB-C port for fast charging, along with one of the microphones and a speaker. So this is a single mono speaker, but it's tuned very well, so it's loud and clear and not quite as lopsided as you might expect with a side-facing speaker, but it is pretty easy to muffle when you're handling the phone, especially for gaming. Not only does this phone retain the headphone jack at the top of the phone, but this is also, once again, a hi-fi quad DAC, which is able to use 32-bit processing to improve the playback performance over wired audio. This phone also comes with a control panel, so you can customize your experience and can automatically adapt the audio quality for whatever set of headphones or speakers you have plugged into it. Another big story with this phone is biometrics. So of course, we have a fingerprint sensor on the back in a very convenient location. This button is also the sleep-wake power button, as it always has been with recent LG phones. This sensor is much faster and much more reliable and very easy to find on the back of the phone without having to look at it. But new for LG is face recognition and voice recognition. So you can actually use your face to unlock your phone, and the difference with the LG phone versus the Samsung phone is that the phone does not have to be woken up to recognize your face. All you have to do is lift the phone to your face, but generally it's not as secure, reliable, or quick as using your finger to unlock it. We also have voice unlock, so you can actually wake up your phone just by speaking a trained command. In my case, computer.
Once again, we have a dual camera setup. LG is one of the first to add dual cameras on their phones, but LG's approach is still quite unique. We have a standard camera and a wide-angle camera. Personally, I think I prefer the wide-angle camera over a telephoto camera just because it's very useful, especially in a tight shot. So for example, if you want to get a full view of a room, really there is no other way to do it without a wide-angle lens, and you can also get some pretty dramatic shots with that wide-angle lens. So the main camera here is 16 megapixels with a huge f1.6 aperture. That lets a lot of light in this camera. We also have full optical image stabilization, along with laser and phase detection autofocus. You'll find those lasers right next to the camera module underneath the LED flash. The wide-angle camera is 13 megapixels with an f1.9 aperture. Now, the great thing here is that you can seamlessly switch between these cameras and you can record 4K video in either camera. One of the things that makes this camera stand out right away in my testing is its 10-bit HDR image sensor, which means it's able to preserve a lot more color detail, especially in HDR images. So any HDR image, especially with a lot of contrast, comes out extremely clear with a lot of detail and a lot of color. Normally, HDR likes to really wash out colors to bring up detail, but in this case, images always come out looking perfect. So I'm really impressed overall. Even though this is an early production device, I'm really excited by what I'm seeing with this camera, especially 4K video. It's very smooth, especially handheld video is very smooth, and with laser AF and face detection autofocus, it seems to be able to find focus very smoothly and quickly. And because this has a very shallow depth of field with that f1.6 aperture, it's very important for that system to work, just because the camera has to move around quite a bit to find focus, and it's working flawlessly so far. Images come out extremely clear and detailed without much distortion or noise, and the color here is amazing. This is one of the best cameras in terms of color I've ever tested. So you can really just point this camera anywhere, especially with HDR on, and you get excellent images. This also extends to low light. With that f1.6 aperture, this lets a lot of light into the camera, and it's able to preserve a lot of color detail, which is normally washed out in longer exposures or with higher sensitivity. The spec sheet for the LG V30 is a pretty familiar one. We have a Snapdragon 835 and an Adreno 540 GPU like most flagship smartphones this year. We also get 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM, or if you go for the V30 Plus, we get 120 gigs of storage, again with 4 gigs of RAM.
So next up, I just want to dig into this interface, and as always, there's a lot to talk about right on the lock screen. So we have this ambient display showing us our current date and time, as well as our notifications up top. But very similar to the second display of the LG V10 and V20, we also have this up here with this little panel. So we can actually slide across to access very similar features, such as quick access to the camera app, the LED flash, the memo app, and much more. Now we can wake up the screen by double tapping it, and we have quick access to our phone dialer or the camera app, and of course you can customize this with additional apps down below as well. Now we can use the fingerprint sensor, which is extremely fast, to unlock the device, or we can use face unlock. We can use both of them simultaneously. So if face unlock doesn't work for you, you can just go right to the fingerprint sensor, which is extremely quick. We also have some quick actions from the lock screen, so we can double tap the volume down key to get into the camera app, or double press the volume up key to get into the memo app. So one of the biggest changes since the LG V20 is the elimination of the second display and its replacement, which is called the floating bar. Now, I actually think it's a better design just because this means I can move this around to different locations on the screen. It's not permanently locked to the top of the display, which is quite far away for a one-handed grip. So now I can move it to either side like so. Most of the same features are here, such as our quick contacts, and then you can hide it by tapping the arrow. We can swipe across here to get to other features like our memo app, the calendar, our contacts, and you can jump to the floating bar settings. So if you jump to that, you can see some of the panels you can turn on and off, or you can just turn off the floating bar entirely. We also get this screen capture tool belt. So we have a number of tools we can use. So we can do a screen grab of whatever we're looking at, and then we can mark it up and save it. We also have scroll capture. So this will scroll through a website or a list so you can capture the entire thing. We also have GIF capture. So this will give us a window. We can hover over a video, and then we can record a GIF. And this will record for up to 15 seconds, and then we can replay it back. So if I go to the gallery app, I'll find GIF capture here. I can play this, take a look at how it worked out. Now, if you want to get rid of the floating bar, what you can do is drag it to the top and take it up to remove, and this will remove it. But if you want to reactivate it, you can go to the drop-down shade, and you'll see this right here to turn it back on. Now, if you want to get rid of this feature entirely, what we'll have to do is go up to settings, and then we have to go to our smart function settings and turn it off.
In terms of the home screen layout, it's pretty familiar for LG. We can swipe all the way to the right to get to Smart Bulletin, which is sort of a smart aggregator of things like your health and fitness data, calendar, music, and much more. And you can turn this off if you want. So if you go up to settings, you can rearrange those categories, turn some of them off, download new ones, or just turn the entire feature off. Now, if you missed the app drawer, there is a secondary launcher you can select. So if we go to settings and go up to display and go to home screen, we have the option to select different launchers, which includes home plus the app drawer. So now we have the app drawer, which is all nicely arranged in folders, and we have several options up here. So we can sort them differently, hide certain apps, or arrange apps by manually dragging and dropping them. To edit the home screens and the apps, just tap and hold and you get to the editor, which allows us to uninstall the apps that we can uninstall, or just reassign different home screens or reposition them. We can also go to our widget panel to install new widgets or just uninstall the ones that are on the home screen. In terms of the app selection here, so if we go ahead and delete an app that we can delete, such as the Facebook Messenger app, this tells us about app trash. So we're going to click close, and we have an app trash icon in the lower right corner. This takes us right to this app trash utility, which basically allows us to restore apps within 24 hours. After that, they just automatically delete. So if I want to restore that app, it goes right back to the home screen, but I'll have to put it back in its spot. Under home screen settings, this is where we can select from a different launcher. So again, if you want to restore the app drawer, or if you want to go with Easy Home, which simplifies the interface. Of course, we have our wallpaper selection and we have wallpaper motion. So the wallpaper moves as you tilt the screen. So if you want, you can turn this off if you prefer. We have different screen swipe effects, and we have icon shapes. So we have two options: rounded squares, which unifies all of the icons, or you can go with the original format. We can also choose to sort apps alphabetically or by download date. We can change the grid layout. So 5x5 is default, but you can select a wider spacing if you prefer. This also allows us to hide certain apps. So if you can't uninstall the apps, you can go here to hide them instead. There's a few other things to know about on the home screen. So of course, you can swipe down from the top to get to your notification shade and our quick setting toggles and widgets. Now, if you swipe down on the home screen, anywhere on the home screen, you get to this search interface. So again, let me just show you that. This brings up search. So this is a universal search. So I can search the device, Google, or other resources. So for example, if I type in Nest, this will search for the app or emails related to Nest or websites. But I also have some app suggestions up top. So recently accessed apps will be right here. Some contacts, messages, Gmail, gallery items, and websites. So again, everything I frequently use will appear right here. Now this is powered by Android 7.1, so we have quick actions on apps. So if I tap and hold on the apps, you'll see those pop up here, such as a new tab within Chrome, or if I go to the Messages app, this will also expand out to the recent messages, or I can start a new conversation. I can also turn some of these quick actions into apps. To look at Samsung's
So guys, next live stream tomorrow. At 11 a.m. again. Bye.